Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Corporate Finance online classes. This is Dr. Mahesh M. Monjeri, Assistant Professor from Department of Management Studies, SDM College of Engineering and Technology, Dharwad. Okay, so dear students, in the previous class, we completed unit number 4, chapter number 13, Working Capital Management. So working capital management was about short-term investment decisions. So how much funds are required to invest in the current assets? And that is what we estimated by estimating the requirement of working capital for the financial year. Prior to that, okay, if we consider the scope of financial management or functions of finance department, there are three: investment decisions, financing decisions, and dividend decisions. So in unit 2, we learned about long-term investment decisions, capital budgeting, and evaluation techniques. In unit 3, we learned about long-term investment decisions, the concept and measurement of cost of capital, how cost of capital is used as a decision criterion in evaluating the long-term investment projects. And then we learned about short-term investments, that is working capital management in unit 4. So dear students, now we are moving on to the second decision of the finance department, or second duty of the finance department, called as the financing decisions. Okay, so please remember, to invest, the company should raise capital. Okay, so the process of raising capital is nothing but financing decisions. The decisions here include, okay, so what is the amount of capital that has to be raised for the purpose of investment? Then second, from which sources to raise capital? As now we know from unit number 3 that the company can raise capital from different sources, like debt capital. It can be loan, or it can be by way of issue of debentures. Then by way of preference capital, by way of equity capital, okay, and through retained earnings and surpluses. So the decision is, what should be the proportion of borrowed capital and owner's capital? Owner's capital here is equity capital. So we call it popularly the debt equity ratio. The debt equity ratio. What should be the proportion of the debt and equity in the total capital? Okay, why this decision is important? Equity capital is the owner's money. The risk is more if you invest more of owner's money. Okay, so a cheaper capital is borrowed capital. A cheaper capital is borrowed capital, someone else's money. It reduces the cost of capital, but only to a point, only up to a point. Beyond that point, okay, if the company continues to raise capital from debt sources, it increases the financial risk of the firm. Financial risk here is the company's inability to repay the principal amount along with its interest. Remember what happens when the company is unable to pay interest on the loan borrowed. Okay, the company's assets will be sold, the company will be liquidated, and whatever amount is received from the sale of company's assets, okay, the banks or financial institutions are repaid their loan. Please recall what is happening with the loan taken by Mr. Vijay Mallya, once, okay, chairman of United Breweries Limited. So there is a consortium, okay, of banks from where he raised several thousands of crores of loans. Okay, now his assets are being sold, including his stock holding in United Brewery Limited, are being sold, money is realized, the banks are being repaid. But so far only the enforcement directorate is able to recover only 40% of the total loan taken by Mr. Vijay Mallya. So that is the reason why the proportion of the debt, okay, and equity should be optimum where the cost of capital is low and the earning per share to the shareholder should be maximum. Okay, this is the background for today's chapter, which deals with the financing decisions of a company, especially the debt equity ratio of a firm. Okay, so with that background, let me go ahead and first let me share a video from TEDx. Videos, these are globally acknowledged and world class quality videos on education. I'll only play up to 3 minutes if that is related to the chapter which I'm going to deal. Students, can you see this YouTube page?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And also let me know whether you can hear the sound. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So this is the TED Ed. Okay. Lessons worth sharing. You can also subscribe to this channel. Okay. A very quality short videos as well as some are long videos on different subjects you can get to know. So please let me know whether the audio is you can hear the audio.
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Thank you.
A famous ancient Greek once said, "Give me a place to stand and I shall move the earth." But this wasn't some A famous ancient Greek once said, "Give me a place to stand and I shall move the earth." But this wasn't some wizard claiming to perform impossible feats. It was the mathematician Archimedes describing the fundamental principle behind the lever. The idea of a person moving such a huge mass on their own might sound like magic, but chances are you've seen it in your everyday life. One of the best examples is something you might recognize from a childhood playground: a teeter-totter or seesaw. Let's say you and a friend decide to hop on. If you both weigh about the same, you can totter back and forth pretty easily. But what happens if your friend weighs more? Suddenly, you're stuck up in the air. Fortunately, you probably know what to do. Just move back on the seesaw and down you go. This may seem simple and intuitive, but what you're actually doing is using a lever to lift a weight that would otherwise be too heavy. This lever is one type of what we call simple machines, basic devices that reduce the amount of energy required for a task by cleverly applying the basic laws of physics. Let's take a look at how it works. Every lever consists of 3 main components: the effort arm, the resistance arm, and the fulcrum. In this case, your weight is the effort force, while your friend's weight provides the resistance force. What Archimedes learned was that there is an important relationship between the magnitudes of these forces and their distances from the fulcrum. The lever is balanced when the product of the effort force and the length of the effort arm equals the product of the resistance force and the length of the resistance arm. This relies on one of the basic laws of physics, which states that work measured in joules is equal to force applied over a distance. A lever can't reduce the amount of work needed to lift something, but it does give you a trade-off. Increase the distance, and you can apply less force. Rather than trying to lift an object directly, the lever makes the job easier by dispersing its weight across the entire length of the effort and resistance arms. So if your friend weighs twice as much as you, you'd need to sit twice as far from the center as him in order to lift him. By the same token, his little sister, whose weight is only a quarter of yours, could lift you by sitting 4 times as far as you. Seesaws may be fun, but the implications and possible uses of levers get much more impressive than that. With a big enough lever, you can lift some pretty heavy things.
Okay, so I hope you are able to see the video as well as hear the audio.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so usually who I used to address, okay, non-commerce students. Okay, so this was for okay, non-science students. Okay. So this video is for non-science students, but definitely the implications of this, okay, will be found in the chapter that we're going to discuss next, okay, which is about leverage. Okay, so what is leverage in a very simple way? Okay, so it was explained in the TED okay, educative video. Okay, so the way we saw at the in the end, when there is more weight, okay, on the resistance end, okay, you can adjust the lever, okay, and you can easily put lesser efforts, okay, to lift the weight on the other side. Same way, what we are going to learn here, okay, in this chapter is how to leverage, okay, or how to use the fixed cost charges, okay, in the total capital structure to leverage them, okay, in order to achieve maximum earnings per share, as debt capital is cheaper. Fixed cost here means debt capital. For example, loan borrowed, rate of interest on the loan is fixed. Okay, whether you make profit or not, interest has to be paid on the loan. Debentures, whether the company makes profit or not, interest has to be paid on debentures at the given rate. Preference capital, whether the company makes profit or not, preference dividend has to be paid at the coupon rate of preference shares. So these are the sources of capital which present fixed cost of capital. It is irrespective of the profit made by the company. So as I said, debt capital is cheaper. Okay, so wise use of this debt capital can help maximize earning per share, the way we saw the case of leverage. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and begin with the chapter. I hope, okay, so that was interesting beginning for all of you. Yeah, I hope we can see the PowerPoint slide now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Unit 5, Financing Decisions. So among the three functions of finance department, investment decisions, financing decisions, and dividend decisions. So this is the second one which we are learning through chapter number 18, Operating, Financial, and Combined Leverage. Okay, so I give a brief idea about what leverage is. So let us go ahead and learn more. Okay, so Archimedes, the great scientist was Archimedes. Okay, he was from Syracuse, Italy. Okay, born on 287 BC and died on 212 BC. Okay, so his contribution to the world of science is enormous. You can know more about him in Google. So once he said, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the earth." Okay, so that was the confidence what he had when he proposed this principle about leverage. So this is the lever. Okay, so where the mass or the weight here is more towards the resistance end. So this is the effort end. Okay, he has pulled the lever towards him. Okay, so with this fulcrum, he should be able to lift this weight, not earth, I mean, okay, but the resistance end. Okay, so leverage scientifically defined the exertion of force by means of a lever, as we saw in the video. Now let us come to our context, corporate finance or financial management. So first let us learn about financing division, though I explained it, but let me go through it once again. Financing decisions is nothing but raising capital for the purpose of investment. For a layman, capital means money, arranging for money, arranging for funds. Okay. So financing decision. Financing decision involves the choice of an appropriate mix of different sources of financing, namely owner's funds, that is equity capital, and outsider or lender funds, for example, loans and debentures. The selection of capital structure. Capital structure is nothing but the total capital and in what proportions capital has been raised from different sources like debt and equity. The selection of capital structure will depend upon the bearing that it has on the firm's objectives of maximization of shareholders' wealth. Okay. Financing mix means the proportion of debt capital and equity capital. Okay. Financing mix which will lead to maximization of shareholder wealth as reflected in the market price of the shares is termed as optimum capital structure. So in this chapter we are going to learn how the company makes use of sources of capital that carry fixed charges like loans or debentures, which we refer to it as debt capital, as a leverage to maximize shareholders' wealth. This part involves a comprehensive discussion of important dimensions of the firm. Operating, financial, and combined leverage analyze the relationship between the source of financing and the value of them. Source of financing here are debt capital and equity capital. A firm can make use of different sources of financing whose costs are different. This we have learned in unit number 3, cost of capital. Okay, debt capital, it may be loan or it may be debentures. Then preference capital, equity capital, retained earnings and surpluses, and so on. So a firm can make use of different sources of financing whose costs are different. These sources may be for purposes of exposition classified into those which the returns vary. The employment of an asset or a source of funds. Okay. Yeah, now when I say which the returns vary, we talk about the fixed cost, sources of funds, and varying those who do not carry a fixed cost along with them. Those sources are equity capital, and those sources that carry a fixed cost are debt capital. Now, coming to leverage. The employment of an asset or source of funds, source of fund here means debt capital, equity capital, and so on. The employment of an asset or source of funds for which the firm has to pay a fixed cost or fixed return is termed as leverage. Okay, I am giving you the example of sources of funds or sources of capital, equity capital and debenture capital. In terms of debentures, the company has to pay a fixed rate of interest every year to debenture holders. So debenture capital carries a fixed cost. Whereas equity capital, it is not mandatory to pay dividend on equity shares. So it doesn't carry a fixed cost. So leverage is the employment of an asset or source of funds for which the firm has to pay a fixed cost or fixed return is termed as leverage. How? We are going to learn in coming slides and numerical problems. So for the purpose of learning, there are two types of leverages. One is operating leverage and another is financial leverage. So at the very outset, try to understand the basic difference between them, though you are not required to find out the difference, but for understanding purpose. So that as and when we go further, you should not forget what is operating leverage and what is financial leverage. So pay attention. Operating leverage, the leverage associated with the investment or asset acquisition activities is referred to as operating leverage. So when a company is going to acquire an asset or a company is going to invest in an asset, okay, so this is called as operating leverage, and associated with this are fixed costs. Associated with this are fixed costs. Okay. And financial leverage, the leverage associated with financing activities is called as financial leverage. Okay. Financing activity means raising capital from different sources of capital. Okay. So that leverage is called as financial leverage. Let's learn more about these leverages. Operating leverage, how operating leverage is determined. Operating leverage is determined by the relationship between the firm's sales revenues. So in the numericals, you will have information on sales revenues of the company. Operating leverage is determined by the relationship between the firm's sales revenues and its earnings before interest and taxes. So as and when the sales increase or decrease, it means as and when the sales change, what effect it has on EBIT of the company, or earnings before interest and taxes. That is how operating leverage is determined. The EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, are also generally called as operating profits. Then financial leverage represents the relationship between the firm's EBIT and earnings available to ordinary shareholders. Okay. So we determine here when the EBIT changes, that is increases or decreases, how it affects the earnings available for ordinary shareholders. Okay. So far, okay, any questions here? So far, any questions you have?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Now let's learn about each of the leverage in detail. The first, let's go ahead with operating leverage. Operating leverage results from the existence of fixed costs, or I would say fixed operating expenses in the firm's income stream. Okay, so when there are fixed operating costs, okay, in the firm's income stream, we generally deduct them. Remember, okay, unit number 2, while estimating the cash inflows for a project. Okay, what we did, if there are any expenses incurred, we usually deducted those expenses. Okay, so operating leverage results from the existence of a fixed operating expenses in the firm's income stream. The operating costs fall in 3 categories. So this is, I think, easy to understand. Fixed costs, variable costs, and semi-variable costs. Fixed costs which do not vary with sales volume. They must be paid regardless of the amount of revenues available. Okay. And variable costs which vary directly with the sales volume. For example, raw materials. Semi-variable costs which are partly fixed and partly variable. Okay. See, overtime pay, for example. So as long as the workers are working only for the designated hours, 8 hours a day, for example, so their wages are fixed. Okay. But if the employees work overtime, they need to pay, company needs to pay additionally. So up to 8 hours of work, the pay is fixed, but beyond any work the worker does, okay, the pay varies. Okay. Operating leverage is defined as the firm's ability to use fixed operating costs to magnify the effects of changes in the sales on its EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes. Okay, operating leverage is nothing but the ability of the firm to use fixed costs to magnify the effect of changes in sales. Okay, so when there are fixed operating costs present in the income stream of a company, a small change in sales, okay, leads to a far bigger change in the earnings before interest and taxes. Okay, say for example, okay, if the change in sales is 10%, the change in EBIT will be 20%. For example, I'm saying the firms employ assets with fixed cost, hoping that volume will produce revenues more than sufficient to cover all fixed and variable costs. Okay, but remember, it is only as long as the company's sales are higher. But if the company's sales are not high enough to cover all the fixed and variable cost, it works in a negative way. A small decrease in sales will lead to a bigger decrease in earnings before interest and taxes. For example, a 10% decrease in sales may result in a 20% decrease in earnings before interest and taxes. So sales are very important here, remember. In other words, with fixed costs, the percentage change in profits accompanying a change in volume is greater than the percentage change in volume. This is what I explained before reading this bullet point. So this occurrence is known as operating leverage. And with the numerical, yes, we are going to understand, illustrate, yes, exactly what is operating leverage and how the firm uses fixed operating cost to magnify the effects of changes in sales on its earnings before interest and taxes. Okay. The alternative definition of operating leverage. Operating leverage can be defined and illustrated alternatively in terms of degree of operating leverage. So degree of operating leverage is measured in terms of degree of operating leverage. So short form is a DOL, all capital, you should remember. Okay, every time you cannot write operating leverage or degree of operating leverage, the full form. And even in examinations, okay, it will be only given. Okay, estimate the, calculate the DOL of the company. It means degree of operating leverage. DOL or degree of operating leverage means the extent or degree of operating leverage in quantitative terms. Okay, so if I say degree of operating leverage is 10, okay, so it means 10 times. So the degree of operating leverage is determined by dividing the percentage change in earnings before interest and taxes by percentage change in sales. Okay, so that is the first equation, and the second equation is degree of operating leverage is equal to total contribution. Okay, total contribution divided by EBIT at base level. What is base level? You will understand when I solve the numerical. Okay, so these are the two equations. Depending on the data given in the problem, you have to select the equation and calculate the degree of operating leverage. Okay, yeah. So now if anybody has a question, kindly let me know. So far. Anybody has any question?
Okay, so how do you
Okay, other than Vedesh, anybody else? Okay, so shall I go ahead with the numerical problem on operating leverage?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so students, I hope you can see the PDF file.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. Thank you. So Unit 5, Financing Decision, Chapter number 18, Operating, Financial and Combined Leverage. Now let us understand, okay, whatever we defined, whatever we understood about operating leverage or how the company, okay, how the company uses operating leverage to maximize shareholders' wealth, we all can understand by way of this example. A firm sells products for 100 rupees per unit, has a operating variable costs. These are variable costs of 50 rupees per unit. Okay, so sale price of the product is 100 rupees per unit and variable cost per unit is 50 rupees per unit. Has a fixed operating costs of 50,000 rupees per year. Fixed operating costs are in total. So fixed operating costs are 50,000 rupees per year. So you have been asked to show the various levels of EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, that would result from the sale of case 1, 1000 units of sales, case 2, a sale of 2000 units, case 3, a sale of 3000 units. So what impact, okay, this change in sales has on, okay, earnings before interest and taxes in the presence of fixed operating cost of 50,000 rupees per year. This is what we learned in theory. Now it is an illustration. Okay, so actually the problem is only this much. Please see here, only this much. Okay, but for the purpose of conceptual clarity, for the purpose of students understanding, so this illustration is showed in detail. So please pay attention. So here we are going to find out the earnings before interest and taxes. I repeat, earnings before interest and taxes. So henceforth I will use the term EBIT. So EBIT for various sales levels. Okay. So what are the three situations they are given? 1000 rupees sales, 2000 rupees sales and 3000 rupees sales. So what I will consider is 2000 rupees sales, I will consider as a base sales. Okay, 2000 rupees sales, I will consider as a base sales. So the sales may decrease or the sales may increase. So this way we are going to consider the two cases. So the base sales are 2000 rupees in this case, and case 1 is where the company's sales increased to 3000 units, and case 2 is where the company's sales decreased to 1000 units. So when the sales increase or decrease, what effect it has on the earnings before interest and taxes, that is what we are going to learn in the presence of fixed operating costs. So I hope so far so good. Okay, now, so the steps are very simple, so please pay attention. We need to find out the sales revenues. So we know the sales price 100 rupees per unit, and we know the sales volume 1000 units. So 100 into 1000 is equal to 1 lakh rupee the sales revenue in case 2. And in base level, the sales volumes are 100 rupees per unit into 2000 units is equal to 2 lakh rupees are the sales volume at base level. Case 1, 100 rupees per unit into 3000 rupees. Sorry, 3000 units of sales. So 100 into 3000 is equal to 3 lakh rupees of sales revenue in case 1. Okay. So before that, I hope you can understand. So when the sales increased from 2000 to 3000, the percentage change in sales is 50%, or you can for reference put plus 50%. It is an increase. And when the sales decreased from 2000 to 1000 units, it's a 50% decrease. We denote it by minus 50%. So please remember this. So once we find out the sales revenues in all the three cases, we just need to deduct variable operating cost first. So the variable cost per unit is 50,000. So 50,000 into 1000 units is equal to 50,000 rupee variable cost in case 2. 50 rupees per unit into 2000 units is 1 lakh rupees are the variable costs in base level. 50 rupees per unit into 3000 units is equal to 1,50,000 rupees are the variable costs in case 1. So by simply deducting, what we get is contribution. Okay, so sales minus variable costs. Please remember, sales minus variable cost, okay, is equal to always contribution. Okay, because please remember here. So in the alternate equation, we need to know what is the contribution. So contribution is nothing but sales minus variable cost. So the contribution 1 lakh minus 50,000 is equal to 50,000. The contribution in case 2, 1 lakh minus, 2 lakh minus 1 lakh is equal to 1 lakh rupee, the contribution in base level. 3 lakh minus 1,50,000 is equal to 1,50,000 is the contribution in case 1. Now less fixed operating costs. So it is same in all three cases, 50,000, 50,000 and 50,000. So 50,000 minus 50,000 is equal to 0. Earnings before interest and taxes are 0 in case 2, where the sales have decreased by minus 50% or 50%. Base level 1 lakh minus 50,000 is equal to 50,000. The earnings before interest and taxes are 50,000 rupees. And in case 1, 1,50,000 minus 50,000 is equal to 1 lakh rupee is the earnings before interest and taxes. So now from the increase of EBIT from base level to case 1, if we consider, from 50,000 it increased to 1 lakh rupees. So it's a straight 100% growth or 100% increase. So EBIT increased from 50% to 100%. And when the sales decreased, okay, I'm sorry, when the sales increased from 2,000 to 3,000 rupees, which is a 50% increase, the EBIT increased from 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees. It's a 100% increase. So a 50% increase in sales resulted in 100% increase in EBIT in the presence of fixed operating cost. And 50% decrease in sales from 2,000 to 1,000 units resulted in the decrease of EBIT from 50,000 to 0, which is a minus 100% or 100% decrease in EBIT. This is how operating leverage works. It is like a dual-edged sword. It works from both the ends, positive way as well as negative way. It can be good for the company, it can be bad for the company. So when it is good for the company, when the sales are increasing, the presence of fixed cost is good for the company. Okay, it is bad, operating leverage is bad for the company, or when the company's sales are declining. So I hope you understood. Okay, so the same things are explained here. Then if we have to measure the degree of operating leverage, so we can use these equations: percentage change in EBIT divided by percentage change in sales. So as you can see, the percentage change in EBIT is 100% divided by the percentage change in sales is 50% is equal to 2. Okay, so this is the degree of operating leverage, which is favorable because sales are increasing. Okay, and also if we consider the case of decreasing sales from 2,000 units to 1,000 units, sales are decreased by, the change in EBIT is minus 100%, or EBIT is decreased by 100%. Minus or plus doesn't count here, but for the purpose of understanding, I have put here. So minus 100% divided by minus 50% is equal to 2. So the degree of operating leverage is same here, but it is unfavorable because there is a decline in sales. Okay, so that's all. We'll wait for the meeting to end. Then kindly rejoin the meeting in less than a minute. I will not wait much.